only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
These are the United States, a united people with a united purpose.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation.
All of us can extend a hand to those in need.
Welcome back, and let's get back to this dichotomy nation we are covering these days. While coronavirus cases continue to climb in a state like Tennessee, dine-in restaurants in 89 of that state's 95 counties are now open for business. Restaurants will only be allowed to open at 50% capacity. That makes sense, and required to follow strict social distancing guidelines. You see there, one of the booths is taped off. At this time, nearly 10,000 people in Tennessee have tested positive for coronavirus. Officials say cases jumped nearly 5% on Sunday, meaning Tennessee is not following White House guidelines for reopening. They call for that slope in new cases. The White House calls, again, specifically, a downward trajectory of documented cases within a sustained 14-day period. With us now is NBC's Ellison Barber in Cleveland, Tennessee. Ellison, tell us what it's like and how spotty it is, because, of course, individual business owners get to decide. Some of them are in crisis, get to decide which place is open.
Yeah, restaurant owners that we've spoken to in Cleveland say that the decision has been an incredibly difficult one. You have to think in places like this, it's not often or every day where people are frequently checking on apps to order a whole lot of delivery. When you talk to people in this community, they will tell you that for them, they tend to go out to eat and sit at restaurants, or they cook at home. So some of the businesses we have spoken to say that this has been so difficult for them financially. They are worried, pardon for the sounds behind me, but they are worried about the health of their workers as well as their customers. To open their doors. The governor's reopening plans, as you mentioned, they apply to all but 6 counties in this state, the most populous counties, the big cities like Memphis, Nashville. Their local leaders are coming up with their own plans. But on Friday, at the day after April 30th, which is when the governor's stay-at-home orders expire, those 89 counties, they're able to open up various businesses. On Wednesday, retail will open. They're supposed to open with less than 50% occupancy. Today, it was restaurants. We spent time at one diner here that's called the Little Diner on First. It is a true family-owned diner. They bought it, the owners, a married couple, just 2 years ago. They told me that they tried to do takeout, carry-out. They really weren't making enough money to keep their business open. They had to temporarily lay off their workers who they feel like are their family. Again, they said today they were worried to open, but they felt like they had no choice. So today, the owners, the customers, and their staff tried to adjust to this new normal of face masks and social distancing. Listen here.
Are they making what they were? No. Are we making what we were? No. And are we where we need to be? Not for a while. It's going to take us probably 6 months to maybe even a year to recover.
I've always been a real cautious person anyway. So using gloves, sanitizing, using face masks, it's all right with me because I generally do all that anyway, except for the face mask.
Sunday marked the largest single-day increase this state has seen since they identified and discovered their first coronavirus case. I asked the governor's office about that uptick this weekend. They told me that their day-over-day percentage increase has remained stable for 14 days. They also said they dramatically expanded testing. Despite that, though, they did say, in light of all these numbers and everything else, that they are constantly evaluating new data as they move forward with what they called a measured approach to open businesses this week. Nicole.
NBC's Ellison Barber. Stay safe out there. Thank you for that report. Grateful to hear from you. The fight against COVID-19 looks different for each region of this country. NBC's Steve Kornacki is taking a closer look at new data that could explain why some states are moving to reopen, even as cases in those states continue to climb. Steve, that is the most jarring sort of fact to try to square. As Allison just showed us, cases jumped by the hundreds, and you've got people expressing a little bit of fear about trying to reopen in that climate.
Yeah, I think what you said there, one thing to keep in mind here is how different this does look, though, depending on not just where you are in the country, but in some cases where you are within a state. So let me take you through a couple of numbers here. You see, these are the states that are doing some form of reopening. Again, a lot of them with these restrictions you're talking about. The type of reopening you're seeing in each of these states, it varies by state, but these are the states that are kind of moving in that direction. Take a look at the statistics in some of these states. Let's take a look, for instance, at South Carolina here. So here you've got the tests per 1,000 people, the cases, the hospitalizations, the death rate. And what you see with these lower three numbers here, 1.0 for every 1,000, one case for every 1,000 people in South Carolina, 0.2 there of one hospitalizations per 1,000, 3
You know what throwed all these graphics off? And there's no doubt you're going to have the numbers go up pertaining to the cases of the coronavirus towards people that's either had it or got it. You know why? Because now there's sufficient kits out there that people can be tested with. People are actually feeling a bit nausea or cold or whatever, and they're going and getting tested, and a whole lot of them are showing up positive. What done that? What messed up the graphics? What messed it up? The fact that we didn't have proper testing availabilities on the front end that put everybody in behind the 8 ball in regard to knowing who had it, who's got it, or who's the carrier of it. So it blindsided us. Now, the people can't figure out how come these numbers are going up even though these states are opening back up. Duh, where's your sign? It's got to do with availability of the test. And people are testing, and they're testing positive for the coronavirus. That's what's happening here. You have, what would it be called? Conflict of interest in the number game because you didn't have the availability of testing on the front end. Now all of a sudden you're testing everybody. The numbers naturally are going up on the graphic scale, but in reality, it's actually leveling off. And the reason why it's leveling off is because of the people that's already done gotten it and gotten over it, and now they're moving on with their lives. Now, if I have misdiagnosed this, it's my fault, and I'll apologize. I'm not an Einstein. I'm not a schooled person. But to me, that's self-explanatory. Whenever now you have all these testing that's available, and naturally the numbers are going to go up. We've got a lot of delinquents whenever it comes to people running the media, the news media, that really don't have a lot of common sense whenever it comes to figuring out various puzzles, rhymes, riddles, or just common sense. We really have a lot of people that's engaged in influencing people. And I don't know if they're doing it intentionally. I don't know if they're doing it non-intentionally. I don't know if they're doing it ignorantly. I don't know if they're doing it consciously. But we have a lot of ignorant people that gives out misguided information to the general public that has put everybody in a state of concern that has caught a lot of people in the dark. We have been blindsided. And now all of a sudden, you have conflicting reports that's coming out. I'm pretty sure there's going to be hot spots. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some of the people that's going to continue to get it that's going to die from it. And I'm pretty sure that this fall, whenever the common cold and other diseases merge pertaining to the winter months and the damp and the cold, I'm pretty sure so will the coronavirus. Unless they've come up with some sort of an antidote to resist against it, kind of like polio or smallpox or tuberculosis or something like that, until somebody figures out something, I'm pretty sure that there'll be a second wave. But it does appear, from my perspective, in a lot of places that it has leveled out. And as long as people continue to do the social distancing, some people, if they feel like that they need to wear a mask, they wear a mask. I wear a mask sometimes. Sometimes I don't wear a mask because sometimes I forget my mask. But social distancing, use common sense, don't get around big crowds. If somebody gets too close, you back them up. You say, hey, wait a minute, back up a little bit. I've already had to get on to several different people because they just want to keep getting closer to me, and they don't have a mask on. And there I am talking, I got a mask on. That way none of my moisture particles coming out of my lungs are being distributed towards them, but yet no, they keep wanting to get closer to me, and I gotta be rude. I gotta say, hey, wait a minute, back up. We're supposed to be social distancing here. So if that's what it requires towards hurting somebody's feelings because they're not paying attention to the social distancing orders, towards being more aware of the coronavirus, well, then hurt somebody's feelings is all I got to say. But that's the reason why the numbers game is contrary to the state that we're in right now, is because of the availability of the test.
0.00% deaths per 1,000. If those numbers look small, compare them to where it's been really, really bad. That's New York. Take a look at the New York numbers. And again, you see the New York numbers just dwarf South Carolina. So the picture that you see coming out of New York, it's got to feel and look different on the ground in South Carolina. And that probably in a state like South Carolina, that explains a lot of the impetus for this. One thing that you probably as a note of caution here in these numbers is right here. It's the testing rate, as we said, per 1,000. Remember, so much attention to the idea of having widespread testing as a key ingredient of reopening. We'll look in New York, again, an epicenter of this, 40 tests for every 1,000 people are being performed there. In South Carolina, you got to divide that.
Once more, whenever you're comparing peaches to oranges, you're going to have conflicting numbers like he's spewing out right now. And they do the same thing. Really, this is the same guy that plays a big part whenever it comes to the numbers game pertaining to our elections. And it's really conflicting. It's confusing. They'll pump out a bunch of numbers at first and make people think that this is going on, but in reality, something else is going on. So we got these people that are supposed to be geniuses whenever it comes to doing things by the book pertaining to the numbers game, but they don't know how to express or explain themselves properly to the general public so the general public can catch on to what's actually happening here. I don't want to use the word educated fools, but I have heard some people use that terminology. And in some incidences, I do wonder sometimes if we're not dealing with a bunch of overeducated people that has good sense whenever it comes to spelling. Boy, they have a remarkable remembering whenever it comes to algebra and history, and their grammar is just right to the T. Boy, they can do all of those things. They can read the charts and spit out the numbers, but they can't express and explain themselves properly pertaining to what is going on, comparing or trying to compare a peach to a banana. Come on. We know the numbers are going to be different. Or we should, if you got any common sense. And you can't just throw a bunch of material out there in front of people. I guess you can if they're gullible to the point that they don't have no common sense and they're like the people that's reading the charts to the point of misleading people. You got to have a little common sense whenever you get to looking at you know, what was comparable then versus now. What is comparable to a big city like New York that's got 25 million versus Memphis that's got 1 million? I mean, naturally the numbers are going to be different. Naturally they're going to be different. Especially if you're talking about what was then versus now pertaining to availability issues of the testing. The testing was not available. The numbers are going to be smaller. Now the testing is available. The numbers are going to be larger.
You got to cut that down to 10 for every 1,000. So you don't have a high, widespread testing rate. And again, you see that, in other states as well. You can see that in Minnesota. This is a state doing some reopening. Again, you see how much smaller it is than New York. You also see that smaller testing rate. Georgia, another one that's gotten attention. Again, the cases, the hospitalizations, the deaths, much smaller than you get in New York, also less testing. But again, I say even within a state, take a look at New York. So, for instance, what you see here is we talk so much about the New York metro area, New York City, Long Island, suburbs outside of it. Right here, this is the part of New York where we're usually talking about these horrible statistics. This is the rest of New York. Here are the statistics for all of New York that's not the New York City metro area. Tests, cases, deaths.
I'm moving on. This guy bothers me. I have heard him spill out so much misguided information pertaining to various elections.
See a star explode through a telescope that may have happened years ago or light years ago. We're just seeing it now. We're going to get into this kind of...
That's a good analogy. A star that you see explode now may have exploded 1,000 years ago.
Nervous.
But we're just now getting around to seeing it. We're just now getting around to understanding it. So you got a timeline difference here.
2-week wait to see if this was a good idea.
Probably. May take about 2 or 3 weeks, may take a month. And if we see a large increase of people getting sick, winding up in the hospital rooms, well, guess what? This experiment has proven to be a bad one. Then we go back to plan A. We all do like we're doing now. We hunker down, we dig in, and we wait and pray to God that some scientist or doctor will be able to find the right antidote that maybe will help people with weak immune systems towards being able to be exposed to this disease and still live through it. People must realize their limitations in what we can do and what we can't do, what we control, what we can't control. Like I said, a lot of these analysts, a lot of these media people, they throw out a lot of material out there to a lot of people, and they don't have good ways of expressing or explaining to the general public of what they're talking about. Now, the person here on the left, Mr. Dan, I believe he expressed that by using his analogy about a star blowing up, but we're just now seeing it today, is a good analogy.
I'm teaching second grade science, so you went with the stars, and I started to sweat because upstairs I'm 2 weeks behind. But anyway, on this idea of known unknowns, this is fixable. I mean, it doesn't have to be this way. We could know exactly what we're going into, and this is what we spent 2 hours talking about Thursday night. States are opening basically with blinders on because there isn't rampant testing. We have nowhere near the kind of testing in this country that they have in South Korea, that they have now in most European countries. So it is as you describe it, but it is not the way it has to be. They could make these decisions with a lot more information if the federal government found some way to
mass produce.
There's one way. I mean, they could create the materials, they could fast track, they could have the Defense Production Act. All the things that we still don't have a good answer for why they haven't done are fixable.
What a novel idea, allowing perhaps science and data to guide us in these decisions. We'll try to kick it up the chain. Nicole Wallace, thank you. We're going to both take a break. When we come back, 26 million Americans have filed for unemployment since the start of this pandemic. Among the hardest hit areas, the great city of Las Vegas, where remote working for those hotel and casino workers isn't possible. Employment benefits since this pandemic started, and today we're taking a closer look at how working families in Las Vegas have been affected. We have video taken last week of the inside of Caesars Palace, casino normally bustling with tourists, now completely empty. For weeks, the doors at Las Vegas casinos have been shuttered, leaving casino workers, and think of this, the bartenders, the dealers, the servers, the cooks, the cleaners, professionals who do not have the luxury of working from home with no wages, no tips, no other option in some cases. The New York Times called Las Vegas, quote, ground zero for this rapidly evolving jobs crisis. They write, Applied Analysis, a Las Vegas-based economic research firm, estimates the city's current jobless rate is to be about 25%, nearly double what it was during the Great Recession, and rising. We are happy to be joined by John Ralston, the editor of the Nevada Independent. He has been covering news and politics in that state and in that city for over 3 decades. John, I keep reading your coverage and I keep looking at the pictures from there. The empty strip, unfathomable. Maybe a block of it used to be closed down for a movie shoot, but this is surreal. It seems like we were out there for what now feels like the last normal weekend in Las Vegas during the caucus. I have to begin with a staggeringly inane question. What's it like there? How does it feel there?
It's not inane at all, Brian, because as I was watching the scenes inside the casinos, and now we're seeing some outside, all the adjectives you used are correct, and I'd add another one. It's really just eerie, Brian. I don't live that far from the Strip, and I've taken a couple of walks over to the Strip, and just to see Las Vegas Boulevard essentially empty. It's like a scene from some post-apocalyptic science fiction movie, right? I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but the same kinds of adjectives can be used to describe what has happened to the economy there. And you pointed out that New York Times story and that figure that Applied Analysis has of 25%, 350,000 people having applied for unemployment benefits. And it's going to get worse before it gets better, Brian.
Your mayor famously, in an interview with Anderson Cooper a couple days back, in effect, volunteered the local population as a control group in coming back to the city. And this is the problem we see so often. No one wants to harm these employees any further. Anyone who's ever been to Las Vegas and tipped a cab driver or thrown a chip to a blackjack dealer even when you've lost your shirt, or paid for a meal or tipped a doorman, that makes you an investor in the economy of Las Vegas and all of those lives. It's like reverse contact tracing. So we're all hoping for the best for those workers and that local population. But talk about the disconnect between governor and mayor and what Las Vegas, the city, is likely to do.
Well, first of all, let me just say I'm not speaking for all of Las Vegas, but as to the mayor's invitation to be part of a control group, no, thank you. And I think that her seemingly continually erratic statements. She put out a statement after that saying that the ferocity of the desert heat is going to melt the virus and some other nonsense. Meanwhile, the governor is getting another kind of criticism, which is that he doesn't have a plan for reopening. His stay-at-home order expires on Friday. I think in the next 48 hours or so, he's going to come forth with some kind of plan to reopen, but not the places you're showing right now, Brian, not the Las Vegas Strip. People are not going to suddenly just start flocking to the Las Vegas Strip. Casinos aren't just going to throw open those doors that have padlocks on them now because nobody's going to come and it's not going to be safe. But as you recall, Brian, Nevada was hit disproportionately by the Great Recession because of the housing bubble and because we're so based on a tourist economy. There was a lot of talk after that. We need to diversify the economy. And there have been some baby steps, Brian, but still, as goes the Las Vegas Strip, so goes the Nevada economy. And it's dead right now, the Las Vegas Strip, and it's not going to open anytime soon. I think the governor will start a phased-in plan probably starting in a week or two, but we're not going to have those casinos teeming with people as we're all used to seeing for quite some time.
John,
I want to weigh in on this. I discovered the same thing in Las Vegas in 2010. 2010, I wound up going out to Bill Luke Chrysler Dodge in Phoenix, Arizona. And I wound up going up to Las Vegas just to see what it was like. I was one of the first million people on the new bridge there in front of the Hoover Dam to go over almost pretty close to $1 billion bridge. That was considered a modern marvel at the time, with the columns that went up. Seems like they went up well over 1,000 feet, but a lot of concrete. Whenever I was there, I had this same experience that this guy's talking about towards the Las Vegas Strip just being bare. I mean, it was going a little bit at that time, but it was the recourse towards what happened of the bubble burst that happened in 2008 leading into 2009. And of course, whenever I got there, it was barely on the recovery towards the country recuperating. I run into the same problem whenever I was down in southern Mississippi working the Katrina damage in 2005, whenever you had, give or take, about 7 or 8 of those casino boats that was out in the Gulf. They didn't have to mandate their rules off of the land rules because they wasn't operating on land. They was a floating casino. But I got acquainted with this young girl that was beautiful. She was a beautiful knockout girl, young girl, 24, 26 years old. She was black, sweet as could be, and she worked in one of the casinos. And I've never been a gambler all my life. I may have gambled in my whole total life as far as actual gambling, less than $100, and that includes playing the lotto towards spending $1 here or $5 there. So I'm not a big heavy gambler. But we had a conversation based around her cocktail work, that she had to wear skimpy clothes, she had to continue to eat less, basically on a non-consistent diet. She probably weighed less than 90 pounds, soaking wet. She was serving mixed drinks and being around that type of atmosphere. And I asked her, I said, how come you don't do something different? Of course, this was right after Katrina had hit, and the majority of the South Coast was basically ruined. It was in lockdown, basically. She said, because I don't have a choice. This is the only thing that I can do to provide a living for my family. She used that as an excuse then because of the economy in that area that was devastated. I couldn't tell you the girls that I have run into in their performances towards working in topless dancing bars and nightclubs that would tell me basically the same story. Oh, I can't find a decent job nowhere else, and this is the only way that I can pay for my education. Those same girls put their bodies out there to be gawked at in a sinful, pleasurable way, all in the name of the good old American greed, the good old American dollar bill. And there's no telling how many lawyers, how many nurses, how many people that are in high-ranking positions today that if it wasn't for them pursuing in the sinful lifestyle of various activities, they probably wouldn't have went up the ladder the way that they have. The point that I'm trying to make is this. Whenever things get tight, people reevaluate their priorities. And usually, people that associate themselves with casinos, with Las Vegas strips, going to these type of nightclubs, this nightlife, are usually people, first of all, that don't have no morals. They're unconcerned about God or their consciousness about the penalty for not being obedient to God. And usually these are the people that's got the money to throw out there at any given time that they can throw a $25, a $50, a $100 tip on the table to a waitress and say, have a good weekend. The Bible talks about these burdens that have been placed upon to humanity. And it talks about that he will not put none other burden upon to thee. Hold fast till he comes. It is going to be a burdensome period of time for a great deal of these industries that profit off of the sinful nature of man, that are basically going to have to restructure their whole concept in survival. You know, we live in a country of the free, and no one wants to force nobody into doing anything that they don't want to do, regardless whether it's live in a sinful nature state or live in an unsinful nature state. The fact of the matter is, a lot of us have voluntarily self-induced ourselves in these type of atmospheres because of greed, because of the high dollar, the high roller type money situation. Once more, for those that do have a good heart, for those that do want to go to heaven, for those that do have a conscience that cares about satisfying their heavenly Father, the scriptures is very clear. For I will not put upon to thee none of the burden. Hold fast till I come. And there's no doubt there's going to be a lot of people that's going to lose their shirts the same way that the people lost their shirts down in the horrible event that happened with Katrina. And there's going to be a lot of people that's going to lose their shirts the same way as the people that went through what they went through in 2008 whenever the financial real estate burst happen. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to re-examine their whole lifestyle and prioritize their lives in a proper way. You know, we can do without Jack Daniels, Crown Royal, bourbon, vodka, rum, tequila, beer, drugs, marijuana, jumping from bedroom to bedroom, living a lifestyle of nothing but sin. You can do without that and still survive. But one thing you won't do, if you plan on surviving, you have to drink water and you have to eat food. You may not eat as much food as some people eat, but you still have to survive. And once more, whenever people prioritize themselves in a time like this, there will be despair. There will be suffering. There will be businesses that will have to forfeit to re-examine their whole structure. If I'm not badly mistaken, whenever the event happened in 2008, leading into 2009, whenever I went out there in 2010, they was just barely on the recovery swing. And it took probably another 6 months to a year before Las Vegas finally got up and running again like they was before the bubble burst happened. They're going to have to go through the exact same transformation again. Regardless whether it's Las Vegas, regardless whether it's Tunica down here in the upper part of Mississippi, down below Memphis, or other types of luxury, sinful activities. They've got casinos in Oklahoma. They got casinos all throughout Louisiana. They got different places, Carbondale, Illinois, where they got gambling casinos on the water, but they don't have on the land. Once more, whenever things readjust, and that's what we're going through right now. We're all going through a readjustment period. Some is going to be more crucial than others, depending upon how much you throw yourself out there on the line. If you're way out there on the limb, trying to keep up with the Joneses, instead of you driving a Pontiac, you're driving a BMW. Instead of you living in a $150,000 house, you decided that you was going to live in a $400,000 house. There's a lot of people that's going to have to make a lot of adjustments towards getting on the same level that they was supposed to have been on before they ever started trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're going to have to restructure and realign their whole portfolio and their whole life based upon. It's going to be humbling. It's going to be humbling to a lot of people because of what we're going through. And if we think that the event that happened with 9/11 was traumatic as far as offsetting the economy, if we think that certain places in the South was dramatic as far as offsetting the economy, if we think that things was pretty horrific whenever the economy went through what it went through in 2008 leading into 2009 as far as restructuring the economy, times 10, pertaining to the last one it hit in 2008, and you may be coming close towards the sacrifices that are going to have to be made within the next 6 months, probably within the next 6 years. On some of these places, it's gonna be devastating for some of these places. They'll have to go in and restructure, and that's what you get whenever you play with the devil's hand. Whenever you're being the devil's advocate, and then the carpet gets ripped out from underneath the economy, this is the repercussions of it. You know, it's kind of like the business of farming. This is a business that you're looking at right here. All right? This is a business. Casinos, live entertainment, young slanky girls wearing slanky clothes, drinking bourbon in the bottle or the glass. These are all business associates that got together and decided this is how we're going to play. These are business people. These are entrepreneurs. So is a farmer. Farmer is a business person. You'll never see a period, a season, a year go by to where a farmer is not welcomed, appreciated, and needed because of his occupation of bringing forth produce, food, substances to the people. Once more, that business associate, he had that choice. He could have invested in Las Vegas. He could have made investments in other areas, but he chose the farming business because it's a guaranteed thing. No matter how hard, no matter how bad things get, people still have to eat. And that's one business that won't shut down. Businesses like a casino gambling boat or Las Vegas, they'll have to take the brunt of the blow. Just like they did during Katrina and just like they did the collapsation of the bubble burst in 2008 leading into 2009. It talks about the burden in the first 4 chapters of Revelations. For I will not put upon to thee none other burden. Hold fast till I come. People need to get their lives in order. People need to make arrangements and have their priorities reevaluated, regardless whether they check out today or tomorrow pertaining to the coronavirus, or it comes upon them unsteadily in the next 30 days or 30 minutes. People need to get their affairs in order whenever it comes to God Almighty. And there's no doubt, I'm sure places like Las Vegas and Tunica and up in southern Carbondale, these will be some of the hardest hit areas that usually takes the longest of recovering, because it's going to take a while to get the economy and get the confidence of the American people back up and going again to the point that they feel confident, they feel safe in just going out and working in a cafeteria or working in a regular restaurant or working in a factory or working for General Motors or working in a welding shop next to somebody else that's making lawnmowers or fitting pipes or making kitchen sinks or whatever. It's going to take a while for the whole country to restructure. Places like this, Las Vegas, will even take longer. And that's the price you pay whenever you want to be a high roller, working with the people that has the money to throw away like that whenever the economy fails, it usually hits these people the longest and the hardest. That's the reality of it. Once more, you can do without bourbon. You can do without tobacco. You can do without those good times on whore hopping or being a whoremonger going from whore to whore. You can't do without water. And you can't do without food for only a certain length of time. And then after that, something's got to give.
My question, because as you think about openings, you think about a single step, you think about just turning over the close sign to open, but Las Vegas needs people to get back on airplanes, people to go back to hotels, people to do a lot of things that in a post-COVID world may feel uncomfortable for a lot of potential tourists for a long time. Are you aware of efforts in the state to be part of public education, not just around phase 1, which is what we're all talking about now, but phases 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the longer term plan to bring people back?
And it's not just going to be places like this. I mean, you take cruises, the cruise industry. Once more, that's all pleasurely things. That's people that has the extra money, has the extra time, they got a good job, they're retired, whatever. They decide that they want to get on a boat and they want to take it easy for a week or two. These are industries that will suffer the longest and the most, simply because whenever the priorities change and survival techniques, and that's the name of the game, is survival. If it wasn't, there would have been no need for us to have shut down. We should have just went ahead and kept going and let the disease seek havoc up onto the world, and the one that fell dead, kick him or her out of the way and somebody else take their job. No. We're more humane than that, towards wanting to take care of ourselves and take care of our health. But these type of industries that I'm talking about will be the industries that will suffer the longest and the greatest, because these are the industries that are put to the side of being something that people don't have to participate in, but they do simply out of pleasure. And usually it's sinful pleasure. Not all, but usually it's sinful pleasure. You got to look at it realistically. You got to look at it with a sense of common sense, which, once more, a lot of your commentators don't have. A lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them don't have. I ain't going to mention no names, but I'm going to leave that like it is.
I think there's a lot of people, very smart people, Nicole, thinking about what to do and how to entice people back. But the real problem is not just that people are not going to want to be in the kind of crowds that are in casinos, but people don't have any money now, right? They've gotten crushed elsewhere by this economy. You can say escape to Las Vegas, celebrate the end of the pandemic, but I don't think that a lot of people are going to flock here. And what a lot of people outside of Las Vegas don't think of, Nicole, is that it's not just about the casinos here. There are so many small businesses in this community who have been crushed by this. The Strip is just one part of Las Vegas, which is a teeming metropolis now of over 2 million people, where a lot of these small businesses, like other cities, have been closed, and some of them may never reopen. And there are a lot of businesses that are dependent on the Las Vegas Strip as the engine that drives the economy here to reopen. And so it is a very, very difficult conundrum how to get people to come back. They are not going to come back right away. Can you do it, as you mentioned, in the phase 2, 3, 4, 5, in some kind of staggered way? You don't have shows right away. You don't have conventions, but maybe you can do social distancing at certain table games. They're going to have thermal measurements. They're going to try to do a lot of these things. The casino owners who are losing, millions of dollars a day want to open. The workers want to get back to work, but it is a very, very difficult proposition.
John Ralston in the hard-hit city of Las Vegas. And for our viewers, if you are among that population, it feels like you have an investment in the place, scroll through the coverage on the Nevada Independent. It is quite extraordinary to read. John, we're thinking of you. Thank you very much for joining us. And
once more, whenever you have a society that pays more attention to a casino or a drink or a buzz, or I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use it anyway in a sexual contented way, an orgasm. Whenever you have a society that is so disoriented that all they think about is party, 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 good times, good times, good times. I mean, whenever they talk about a lot of these people that's working, you know how a lot of these people are working? They're working by making fun. They're working in the atmosphere of fun. That's what they consider working. Put them out here in a hayfield somewhere and let them start hauling hay. Put them out here in a tater field and let them start digging taters. Put them out here in a construction industry and have them start hanging steel or putting brick and mortar on a wall. Have them start digging a ditch. Put a shovel in their hands and have them start digging a ditch. And then let me hear them come back and say, what type of work is really work? Whenever you have a society that had turned so wicked to the point that we was willing to spend $500 million on a coliseum to watch our favorite ball team. But yet now we was letting our veterans suffer living on the streets. We was letting our senior citizens suffer by not taking care of them and not being conscious of the things that they was having to be exposed to. You have a society that had become wicked and demented and evil. And this is God's way of slowing us down and stopping us in our tracks and saying, hey, you need to pay attention to what is going on. Because obviously Hurricane 1, Hurricane 2, Hurricane 13, Hurricane 27 didn't get your attention. Obviously, the things that went on in Waco, Oklahoma, the things that went on pertaining to 9/11 was only short-lived. It didn't get our attention. All the things that happened out west pertaining to the fires, and even partially up here in East Tennessee, up in the Appalachian Mountains. The hurricanes towards completely making a disaster out of a whole colony of people on an island did not get our attention. God has allowed for this to fall upon the humanity to get our attention. And if we don't get it right, I'm telling you now, he will come back in flaming fire, taking vengeance upon them who know not God, and upon them who obey not the gospel. And he will take out who are trying to live right. He will rapture the ones that are already in the grave. And he will burn every stinking thing down to the ground pertaining to what mankind has structurally built, regardless whether it be residential or commercial. And I'm pretty sure that's going to include boats and airplanes. And that's going to include satellites and all the above. And he will throw this world off into such chaos that you will wish that you had never been born. And you will literally beg to want to die during this event. And according to the Bible, death will flee from you if you have missed out on the second coming of the Lord. Because this will be a time of trouble such as man has never seen before. We're already in a time of trouble such as we've never seen before in the latter part of the 19th, the latter part of the 20th, coming into the 21st century. We're already seeing a difficult time right now such as we've never seen on a global scale. We've seen different parts of the country and different parts of the world suffer, regardless whether it was a major earthquake, a typhoon, regardless whether it was a natural catastrophe or a man-made catastrophe. We've seen catastrophes. Some of us have lived through catastrophes. Some of us have brought our own catastrophe into our lives because we was running from God and we didn't pay attention towards what we was doing. But the Bible is very clear in saying that these will be perilous times that will fall upon humanity pertaining to the signs of the sin that has befallen upon to mankind and upon to this planet. And this is God's way, using tough love tactics. This is God's way of allowing for this to fall upon the humanity so that humanity will wake up. That way God won't have to destroy humanity the way that he did in the time of Noah, towards destroying all of us. This is God's way. This is our second chance. And if we get it wrong this time, there may not be a third chance or a fourth chance. We have to pay attention and we have to learn from these lessons. And we have to recognize why these things are occurring. Or the lesson will be repeated again. And as it gets repeated again, it usually gets intensified. In other words, you start out by getting one paddling because you've made one mistake. You make two mistakes, you get two paddlings. You continue to make the same mistake, the paddlings keep coming up. You get 3 paddlings, you get 4 paddlings. Oh, you just won't learn. Okay, we're going to lay into you a little harder. You're going to get hit with 5 paddlings this time. Now, when are you going to learn to stop doing what you're doing? Is it going to take 15 paddlings? Is it going to take 100 paddlings? How many paddlings is it going to take before you're going to learn we are not going to accept what you are doing? You are making a mistake. Learn from your mistakes. Learn from the paddlings. Just like the Bible says in the first 4 chapters of Revelations, for as many as I love, I will chasten. That means I will paddle you. And I will rebuke you. For as many as I love, I will chasten or chasten. And I will rebuke you of those who God has already declared as undoable. Or it's time for you to be called home to begin with. Because a lot of these saints actually want to go home, including myself. I don't want to self-induce it. I don't want to go before my time. But whenever it does come my time, hallelujah, get me out of this hell. Get me out of this hell that Satan has devoured the people of.
Nicole, John's point, I can't name a state where there's one city, one population center that is responsible for so much of the economic beating heart. And to your point, they get there by plane, they buy dinners in restaurants.
Right.
As the casinos put it, hopefully they lose a lot of money at the tables.
They got all this money to throw away, but they can't take care of their senior citizens. They got all this money to throw away, but they can't take care of the people that took care of us pertaining to our veterans. Come on. Can't you see the sickness in these people, in their lifestyles towards what they do and how they do it? Just like that black girl down there in lower part of Mississippi. I understand at that particular moment in time, she had to go back working as a waitress in a casino because that was the only jobs available at that time. At that time. But now, 15 years later, is that same girl still working in those casinos? those floating casinos down there in the Gulf of Mississippi? If she is, she's doing it because she wants to be doing it. She's not doing it because she has to be doing it. Because I'm pretty sure the lower part of Mississippi has opened up to the point that she could get any type of job other than having to wear skimpy clothes and serving a bunch of people alcohol. Now, I'm talking about a girl that I went to the same church with that claimed to be born again, filled full of the Holy Spirit. I got associated with this group of people. They was all blacks down there. And they loved me to death because they sensed the anointing in my life. Still got the guy's telephone number. Still talk to him from time to time. The minister that was down there in the Gulf at the time whenever Katrina hit. Still keep up with him. But I don't know about this girl. I don't know if she's still doing what she was doing. If she is doing what she's doing it willfully. Because there's many more other jobs down there that she could get now without having to work wearing skimpy clothes and being around a bunch of alcohol, serving a bunch of brutes that's got money to blow and throw away in a sinful nature. She maybe had to do what she had to do during the time that she done it, but she doesn't have to continue to do it. That's the point that I'm trying to make, pertaining to the sinful nature of man. And you know as well as I do, Las Vegas was created for the wickedness and the wicked hearts of mankind.
But that...
And maybe not all, maybe not everybody is in it for the sin. But by and large, whenever you have legal prostitution, and they do the things that they do down there towards ruining people's lives, anybody that's got a bad gambling habit, that substitutes their responsibilities towards taking care of their family versus going down there and gambling is a sin. They've got their priorities in the wrong place.
That takes care of everybody in town.
And it is, I think, a spot and a conversation that encompasses every one of the behaviors that's been impacted. As John wisely said, most people, unless you have a problem, gamble with the kind of money you have left over. I mean, it just the behavior, the decision to spend a vacation in Vegas presupposes the kind of discretionary chunk of money in your budget that I think a lot of people wonder when they'll ever have again, and as well as international tourists. I mean, every time I've been to Vegas recently, there have been more international tourists than American tourists in some of the places at some of the shows and some of the restaurants.
And you're going to run into the same problems at Disney World. You're going to run into the same problems at Six Flags. You're going to run into the same problems all across the planet of people in a partying state that was taking life without an accord of the seriousness of all this. You're going to have people that's going to reevaluate their priorities. And if they don't, these are probably the people that was already doomed to begin with. And they don't have no hope pertaining to trying to live a true walk with God, a righteous life with God. These are people that have already throwed their souls to the devil, and they could care less about the consequences pertaining to the sinful nature that they're partaking in. This isn't just going to affect just one industry. This is going to affect industries across the board. That's probably going to be at least 10 times worse than the bubble burst that hit in 2008 and in 2009. Because now you got to put into the equation that wasn't just, let me rephrase this. You got to put into the equation that in 2008, 2009, that was a little hiccup in compared to this bigger hiccup, okay? But you also got to put into the equation, we didn't have concerns of confidence levels going down like they have recently because of people being scared to get out in the public. And you can call them phobias if you want to. But we didn't have that factor to have to deal with in 2008, 2009 versus what we're having to deal with now as far as confidence. If people don't feel confidence in going to the beaches, if people don't feel confident in going to the Six Flags or Disney World, that's going to be a big, big factor pertaining to recovering out of all this. And once more, the fault falls upon the feet of those that was in charge that should have seen this coming, that we should have had proper testing services available and didn't get in behind the 8 ball as far as we've gotten in behind the 8 ball like we have. So this government, the people that's running this government, are the very people that has helped to put us where we are right now because of this incredible burden that has been placed upon the humanity pertaining to this disease. I don't think it's going to bounce back in 6 months the way that it did in 2008, leading into 2009 whenever the bubble burst happened. I might be wrong. It will come back. But it's going to take longer than any 6 months to a year. Because whenever people spend their money and they no longer have money in their savings account and their sock drawer is empty, whenever people are broke, honey, people are broke. People ain't like y'all. Both of y'all make good money in the industry that you're in. I'm going to say the guy to the left makes at least $250,000 a year. I don't know what kind of money they're paying you, but I'm sure it ain't chicken feed. I'm sure it's more than minimum wage, more than Tennessee minimum wage, which is, last I seen, was about $7 or $8 an hour. You people got savings accounts. You got deep pockets. You have wads of $100 bills in your sock drawers, stuck back in case of a rainy day. The majority of the general population don't have that. They're barely struggling. They're living paycheck to paycheck. This is going to be devastating for people in these type of industries. Disney World, Six Flags, Tunica, Las Vegas. Good luck to all of us. Maybe it's time that the world become more humble towards people, treating people with a little more decency and a little more respect. Because the way that we was going, and being willing to spend $500 million on a casino to see our favorite ball player versus taking care of the people that took care of us with our military and our senior citizens, God could have very well destroyed this whole thing the same way that he done during the Great Flood. And if people can't see that and understand that, then they're the ones with the problem. Not the messenger that's giving the message out right now, which is Dennis James Juby Jackson. But it's pertaining to the way that people can interpret the message that's got to do with reality. This is a burden that has been brought upon to the people because of the sins of the people. We are all guilty of this in some form or fashion. I don't care what continent you live on. And it's time that people was accountable for the things that they've been doing just like the things that they haven't been doing that they should have been doing. It's a wake-up call. Good luck to all of us, and shalom.